What's up, Sales RXers? Look, with outbound conversion rate benchmarks being as low as 3%, it's no secret that it's really tough right now for a lot of sellers. And if you're an individual contributor or a senior leader in marketing, RevOps, sales, any role that has a revenue related metric that you have to attain, it's time to find a better pipeline channel. So, what's better than selling to someone who doesn't know you or your product? Selling to someone who does. This is where Champify comes in. Champify monitors key contacts at accounts like champions, post-sale sponsors, admins, heavy users, and they enrich that data to detect job changes, determine relevancy for outreach, and then assigns and alerts reps with those newly assigned leads. So if you haven't tried out Champify yet, you need to give it a shot. Stop spinning your wheels with outbound heavy sales motions and start selling to people you've already sold to. You can click the link below in the show description for an extended proof of concept and free data test from the team at Champify. What you'll do is click podcast in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Let them know that the Sales RX podcast sent you so they know who to give the VIP treatment to. Now let's jump into today's episode. So Clayton, I'm really excited to have this conversation today, and I'll tell you why. Being a sales leader that works and has sold to a lot of salespeople in the past, I know that there's this whole thing about like, oh, we don't want to, feature dump. We don't want to get into all this conversation about product. We want to talk about pain points and problems and storytelling. And that's great. And I totally agree. And sometimes it depends on what you're selling. If you're selling a point solution, yeah, maybe you play a lot more on those emotions, problem implication, all that kind of stuff. But especially when you're selling enterprise and complex level solutions and you're talking to CTOs and CISOs and directors of IT, it does tend to get more complicated and product oriented. And I think there's just like a big gap between product marketing specifically and how salespeople are actually talking about product. Part of it, again, as I said, it's a lot of salespeople selling stuff to salespeople these days in terms of point solutions. So a lot of the thought leadership and advice on LinkedIn is storytelling and problems and all this. But I'm also a firm believer as someone who sold a technical product in the past that if I don't understand how small parcel shipping works in their day-to-day and how our tools work, I can't apply a story to that. I can't apply a feature action benefit statement to that. And I know you're the expert here as a head of marketing and a consultant and doing a lot of product marketing in the past. So let's dive into this whole world of product marketing and how sellers can really leverage product marketing to be better sellers. So what have you seen in the product marketing to sales alignment world? What are some of the gaps and why does this not usually work out very well? And product marketing will just push out their stuff, and then the sales leader is like, okay, now I'll go tell everybody how to sell the product. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think the biggest issue is product marketers generally develop messaging for what looks good on a website, in an ad, in an email. But when you actually are talking to somebody, it feels weird to sort of use, like, say, this tagline that someone might have at the top of their website. It feels unnatural, right? And so then sales has to figure out, okay, well, that's the messaging that they have that they gave me that's on the website. What am I going to actually say to somebody when they're in a call? And so I think the biggest piece is that we need feedback from sales. Sales needs to sort of share, hey, this is what's working, this is what isn't working. This is what I think is what I'm hearing from the quote unquote from the front lines. And then I think also product marketers need to review gong calls and see how it's actually resonating with the customer and make the tweaks. I think the other piece that I found is, now that we're back into events again too, having product marketers go to events and doing some of the pitching themselves. Now you sort of get the feel for what's the flow look like when someone says, okay, hey, where are you? Who are you? Where do you work? What do you do? And you can sort of incorporate that back in. So I think it's really that the messaging and positioning should be a two-way street between product marketing and sales, and not just sort of sales or sort of product marketing broadcasting and sort of pushing, like you said, messaging onto the team that's actually going to be using it.
Yeah. And as a product marketer, so I think it's hard too, right? There's a lot of thought leadership out there these days. And then you go and you look at someone's LinkedIn profile and you're like, Oh, well, of course you're going to say that the sales development world should be eliminated because you're a marketer and you've never actually done sales. Or, of course,
Mhm.
you're going to be great at talking about writing cold email, hypothetically, but you've never actually been a salesperson. You've just been a person that runs copy and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff that can happen when you're actually doing the role. And
Yeah.
obviously, it's not like every product marketer can go work in sales for a bit. So that makes it tough. But there is, as someone who goes in, and I know you go in and you consult with companies on
Yeah.
marketing and
Yeah.
things of that nature, what are some of the frameworks or things that you give their product marketers to make sure that they're effective at writing that messaging and creating those essentially like those value added statements in
Hmm.
terms of how we talk about product, especially when we're demoing, right? Not even when
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
the cold call and everything, but when we're demoing and when we're trying to demonstrate the value of what we're offering and how it works.
Yeah, I think honestly, core to even before we talk about marketing and sales, core to a company being successful is that they have a deep understanding of the customer that they're building products for. We have to understand who we're building it for, what their goals are, their challenges, their incentives, where they spend their time, all those sort of things, so that we can really understand how our product is going to help them, how it's going to align. And hopefully, we're building the product with the customer in mind to begin with. And sort of that helps everything else flow from there. And then once we're thinking about messaging, one of the pitfalls that I usually find, especially with early stage companies, is that they tend to have messaging that is more what centered. It's who are you? What are you? Because that's what VCs are generally looking for. They're less interested in the you're not going to give a headline image on your VC deck that says the benefit that you drive for your customers, because they're wanting to know what are you and why are you going to win. And so the benefit should be in there, but it's generally a little bit further down the list. So if you try to use that same type of messaging for a different audience, for your actual customers, it's just not going to resonate as well, because they're trying to understand why they should care. And so generally, you want to start with a benefit, but you want it to be something that you can sort of stand on and own, that's separate from someone else. I think when we were chatting earlier, you sort of mentioned like, oh, time savings, money savings, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, lots of things save you time, lots of things save you money. So what's the unique benefit that you do? How specifically are you saving them time or money or whatever it might be? You may, at the crux, that still might be the primary benefit, but how is it unique from somebody else? And so we can dig a little bit deeper. For instance, are you saving them time in one specific? You talked about selling the sales. Are you saving them time on one specific piece, like the proof of concept, or in the demo, or something else? Like what's the specific area that you're sort of providing value for, so they can understand that benefit? And then from there, you'll have supporting. I generally like 3 or 4 supporting sort of phrases that go under that, and in order to say like how you are providing that benefit, basically. So you say, this is the benefit that I'm providing, this is how, and this is how we're doing it, and here's the sort of supporting pieces that sort of help you to understand that. I think the product definitely needs to be part of it, though. Even on the website, we can't be having just sort of animations or illustrations or whatever, but actually trying to show the product so people really understand how you drive this benefit. It also helps if you have the product as part of the marketing, because then they get it a little bit more, hopefully, by the time they get to the sales call, and they're generally going to be higher qualified leads, because they know the benefit you drive, they know how you do it, they know a little bit of what your product is, and now they're just sort of reaffirming that, and asking their questions with the sales team, as opposed to coming in cold, like, okay, I kind of get what you're doing, but I need you to sort of explain all of it. Hopefully they've already gotten that explanation from the marketing that you did beforehand.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially like I think about it in a demo, how well like being able to talk about product helped. And then we had such a shout out
Yeah.
Nathan Schlafer, my old product marketer at 3PL Central. He was great at working and designing the web pages, because I would be on a demo with these logistics companies and these supply chain warehouse companies, and we'd be in a Zoom call and I would just be on the website. Once I got through a couple discovery questions, and it was more about like associating products we had with problems they were facing, and I would just go to
Hmm.
the product section and click on the product. So if we were talking about warehouse management billing, because they bill separate customers for separate things, and it's a really
Hmm.
complicated process. But TLDR, it's like 8 sets of superset data for every customer, and these guys might have 30 to 40 customers per warehouse and 5
Mm-hmm.
warehouses and their one account. So I would walk through, like, I would just kind of be on the page so they have something visually to look at, and then
Yeah.
use some of the highlighted areas and some of the taglines to dig deeper about, well, how did we reduce billing by 30%, right? How did we help capture 15 grand in charges,
Yeah. Yeah.
in missed charges monthly? Like, and then applying those use cases. Hey, a guy on the floor receives a package. It's a pallet. It's broken. He's got to tear it down and repalletize it. And that's a repalletization charge. But oh, lunch break kicks in. Now I'm wandering off the floor to go take my lunch break. I come back. I forget I even did that. That's $50 in charges you just missed. That happens twice a day. That's a good chunk of change annually. But with 3PL
Mm-hmm.
billing and the scanning, like, because we had those product pages built, because he would sit on those calls
Yeah.
and he would work with customer success and he would put those things together to act as a guide for the salespeople when we were conducting discovery and then further showing the product in demo with our solutions engineer. It brings up an interesting concept. And I mean, I don't think there's ever a right answer to this, but so this is more, I would just like your opinion and feedback. Who owns some
Yeah.
of that messaging? Not only from like a sales sequence side,
Yeah.
when you're kind of talking a little bit about product top of funnel, but also when you're, do you think product marketers should be leveraged when we're building out our discovery questions and responses to certain discovery questions? Like, how do you see that working when it comes to sales and product marketing alignment?
Yeah, I think that it needs to be a team effort, and I also believe that the messaging needs to generally be owned by the product marketing team so that we're consistent. Really, we want to make sure that we have consistency across all of our marketing, across all of our sales, and so it's nice. It's better to have sort of one central person that's in the midst of all of that. But like sort of I started the call with, it can't be product marketing doing it on their own and sort of pushing messaging on other teams, because it's just not gonna, it's gonna make a bad relationship. Marketing and sales, or product marketing especially, are just, they're not going to work well together. Sales is not going to want to listen to the team because they don't feel like they're being listened to. I mean, it's the same thing you have in any relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be a really good one if you're the only one talking, you're never asking how they're doing,
Yeah.
or anything like that. You're going to have a bad relationship, whether it's a work or personal or whatnot. And so we need to make sure that we have a two-way relationship in all of our working relationships, and it's especially true with the sales and product marketing teams. And so I think uh, product marketing needs to use sales and customer success as an input to the messaging and positioning that they're developing, as well as input from even the marketing, what's working well in our ad campaigns and email campaigns that we're doing as well. And then pushing out the messaging to sales, but working with them saying, hey, here's what I've developed based on the feedback from you, based on the insights I have from competitors, from the market, from our ad campaigns. This is what I think is going to work well, but recognize that it's always going to be a fluid piece. And so I want feedback from you. I want to know, how is this working? How does this feel when you're saying it on a call? And what sort of changes do we need to make going forward to make sure that it continues to work well and we're always getting better? I think that's the other piece that I like to make sure is that partner teams realize that the messaging I've put together today is likely not going to be the messaging we're going to have maybe next quarter, right? As we
Mm-hmm.
get more and more mature, the messaging will stay consistent because we're getting more data, basically, that this is the right messaging. But even with large companies, their higher level messages will change over time as the product changes, as the target market they're going after sort of develops over time. And so making sure that the teams realize that it's not a bad thing if the messaging is changing. It means
Mm-hmm.
that we're getting more insight. And I want them to be part of that so that we can make sure it resonates.
Yeah. As a product marketer in the past, what is a way in which sellers could better leverage product marketing that you wish more sales teams would do? Like, is it asking better questions about the product one pagers? Is it being part of that creation process? Is it being more
Mm-hmm.
open with getting people on live calls or getting people recordings of good calls? Like, where is something where if I'm a seller and I have a product marketer, I can leverage that person better, that you would say, hey, this is something I don't see a lot of, but would really help?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's necessary as well is in that sort of um, relationship developing, is a lot of times I get one-off requests from the sales team, and realizing that's difficult for me to sort of handle. Like I can't make a different one pager for every team. And so let's figure out what for every customer or whatnot. So let's figure out what is generally the best. Let's put together stuff for that. And then I want to work with you on developing some things so that you can sort of also have some control. So we've got some tweakable sort of plug and play pieces to this as well. And so I think that's one piece where they don't think as much about like, hey, how can I get resources from product marketing, but also the flexibility from them that I can sort of create things on the fly that I can share with people, also depending on whether it's the industry or what they told me is their main goals or whatnot in the call, to make sure that it's personalized to the customer. Because I think that's a lot of times sales is like, hey, they asked for this specific thing and they want to personalize it, which is great because that means that hopefully it's more useful for them. But at the end of the day, product marketing can't just sit around making one pagers all day either. And so we need to make sure, how do we sort of balance that out and work together on that? I think one of the other pieces is, like you said, flagging, hey, this was a really good call or this was a really bad call, but helping me to also get not only that sort of qualitative data, but is there something that you can do on the quantitative side? Like, can you tell me, hey, if sales is sort of managing their own sequences, for instance, can you get a little more analytical with A/B testing of your headlines and other things so that you can actually give me data that says it in addition to these one-off or whatnot sort of calls? Because it's difficult for me to say, hey, I'm going to make a change to the messaging because you had 5 calls that didn't go well or whatnot. And so can you show me more of the scale so I can understand how big of either it's really working or it's not working? What's the scale here? Because we don't want to make changes, obviously, off of a handful of customers. And I think that also goes to being open to test, whether that's, I also spend time on the growth marketing side. So whether that's, hey, we want to test more ad channels, a different sort of way that we're driving leads. We want to test more different messaging, whatever that might be, just being more open to testing and sort of being excited about that. I realize not everybody is going to be someone that's really excited about that, but hopefully we get at least a couple people in the sales team. And then I think the last piece, which is sort of related but unrelated also to product marketing, is being willing to connect me directly with customers. Sometimes I'm going to need to have a conversation because they're not going to talk about things that I really need in order to understand who our best customers are. And so being willing to make that connection, being willing to do the little bit of extra work to get somebody signed up for a case study, those sort of things, because I know a lot of times sales teams are worried that, hey, if I push that I require this in my deal, I might not get the deal. But we need to think also long-term that this potentially a little bit longer sales cycle with this one deal hopefully means a higher close rate or shorter sales cycles with the next 10 deals because we've developed this. So I think working with me to be a little bit more longer term focused, I think is sort of the frame, the sort of theme across all of that is, let's think, I know you need this one for this one call. What can we do to give you the power to do this for all of your meetings? I know that you've got this feedback from these couple calls. What can we do so that you can share with me a little bit more about this longer theme? And then also, what can we do to get more case studies, more references, give me connections to the customers again, so that we have better, whether that's collateral or just insights for longer term as well.
That's great. I love it. It's all about collaboration. I really do feel there is a lack thereof. I see it constantly, but it's like, one hand needs to talk to the other. If you're not letting the two do their thing and you're just siloing people off, I have a whole concept around like efficiency and meeting culture and stuff that for another day, but it's definitely about like finding that right time to work collaboratively with the teams around you that you're supporting and the teams that need to also be supporting your success, because at the end of the day, we're all just looking to attain revenue. That's the goal of the company, right? Bottom line, outside of their mission statement of changing the world or whatever they're trying to feed us, they definitely want to make some money doing it. So, Clayton, this has been really awesome. Thank you so much for the time today. If I'm a listener and I want to connect with you, how can I get in touch with you to ask you a question or check in to see if you can do some consulting for my company?
Yeah, for sure. I think the best way is to reach out on LinkedIn.
Awesome. And for those of you that are interested in engaging with Clayton and his website, we'll have all the information in the show notes below, as well as access to the resources with the Sales RX community. Thank you to everybody for listening today, all of our first-time listeners, repeat listeners, and those in our Sales RX community. That's all we have for today, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you, Clayton.